All right, it's been a little while. So in about 20, 30 hours, I was gonna say 24, but it's more than 24. Yeah, about 30 hours from now, I'll be on a trip to Japan for the World Championship. And I always like when a set first starts to kind of discuss my thoughts, what I've been seeing. This is our first big tourney, so I think it's kind of fun to go make kind of my predictions for the event, what I think is good, what I think is bad. It's a little hard this time just because I am working directly with a lot of people, and I don't want people to be disadvantaged for working with me. So I'm not going to be talking any specifics about people that I'm working with, or any decks they're going to be playing, or anything like that, or how I might that might influence my expectations. I'm going to speak from mostly a generic perspective of what decks I expect to be good and how well I expect them to do. But if you haven't seen this, the Japanese website has all the details of the World Championship. Again, it's this weekend in Shibuya. It is a two-deck tourney, but it is the AB style like North American Championships had, and not the traditional two-deck that Oceania and I believe Europe also used. And then there is the double elimination top eight, I believe, in day two. Yeah, top eight is cut too. Some really cool prizing. Where's the prizes? If you haven't seen these, I'm going to get myself a nice, lovely playmat that I will probably never use a different one again. Oh, I don't know. I love my Terra as well, but Aerith is quickly becoming one of my favorite Final Fantasy characters. So even though this card is not exciting me, this mat really is. We get a set of sleeves, or 3 packs of the sleeves. Heck yeah. We get another Warrior of Light promo along with one gold stamp Warrior of Light promo. Top 16 get cards that are signed by the illustrators. Oh, looks so good. I wish they picked a better one. For, like, Shimakobe-san does so much good art. Like, putting her on Azura in here feels a little bit like they could have done a better card, but I mean, like, all of these are so nice. Yeah, Queen looks good. Mitsuda picking Queen is good. Ruby Asami on Sarah, that's like one of her best arts. I love the art for that card. Gen Kobayashi, I think one of my favorite art of his is this Vincent. Just super, super cool. Oh, it's all right here. I wasn't even reading it. I just know the artist. Yeah. And then, yeah. So top 8, you get a special copy of Warrior of Light. I'll show the champion one real quick. But the bottom left has it stamped with your placement. I imagine these are going to be selling for quite a bit, particularly the world champion one if that person is willing to sell it. And then you have the commemorative trophies, as well as the choosing the promo card for 2025 for the world champion. So, uh, let's talk tier lists. I just realized that me do some live editing done cheap. Where's my tier list? This is a tier list, right? Yeah. So if you haven't seen a tier list of mine before, I used to make these really elaborate PowerPoint slides with them. I haven't done it for the last 2 sets because it's a lot of work. And I kind of like the raw ability to just kind of build this as I go. I used to go through and like pick key cards out and like put them there, and I had to kind of remember the order and be able to talk about all the decks in that way. And really, I think that like it kind of just makes sense to have me sit with a tier maker and just kind of talk my way through it. But so what am I like describing each of the tiers? Tier 1, these are decks that effectively have much less weaknesses. You're going to see them top cutting events, they're winning events. These are the decks that everybody's preparing for. Tier 2, less common. They're going to need a favorable bracket or an unknown innovation, but still capable of winning an event. They're going to have some problems that might be able to be overcome, but still ones that are going to exist. Tier 3, these are the very bottom of decks that I think can get into top cut. I think one of them could get to top cut, but like I don't think like they're going to win any events. Rogue, these are decks with pretty severe flaws that I'd find shocking if they made top cut. but they can be upset in Swiss rounds, and then everything else. There's a lot of fun decks, decks that are really cool that could be really fun, but at the current moment, they're not really taking a very strong place in the metagame space. They're not decks that people are preparing for, and for that reason, I'm just not going to really talk about them very much. So last set, at the very beginning, this was 2 months ago, I made a tier list, and I think this is pretty good. I think that, you know, tier 1, Mono Earth, Refia, I think Realm, like Mono Water with Realm was one of the best decks. Chaos and Corilla, or Knights, like I might have swapped those around. Like, this looks pretty good. Hit flow might be too high. Mono Wind definitely probably should have been bumped to like tier 2, but it really was not getting results towards the end of Hidden Hope. And yeah, Hidden Trials had its, like, it had a resurgence for reasons that I'll get into when I make the tier list above. But even stuff like Ice Lightning I put in tier 2. I ended up taking this and winning Oceania, but it didn't do well anywhere else. I think a lot of these tier 2 decks. Gigawall had a couple of top placements. If I go lower, I miss anything big here? Not really. Ninjas had one top. And I think that I guess the 14 aggro list did have a top as well. But for the most part, I think these are pretty accurate. So, I have a new tier list. And I've only added 4 real archetypes. It's only 4 that I really see, like, new-ish archetypes being built from the set. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to crown the best deck with... I still think Mono Earth is just the best deck in the game right now, if I'm being totally honest. I think the deck does literally everything. It doesn't have any major flaws or weaknesses. It ramps. It has Earth's defensive tools. It has the ability to play literally any toolbox that it wants, thanks to Earth's color fixing. So you kind of get like the best of all worlds. Like, in theory, if you knew your exact... Like, if this game had a sideboard, Mono Earth would be completely busted because it could start siding options for different matchups. You know, if there was a 6-card sideboard or an 8-card sideboard, I think Mono Earth would go from being the best deck to being like tier 0. As is, because it kind of has to pick and choose. Like, it's got about 4 to 8 tech slots, I would say, and those can be taken up by various different options. I think that Mono Earth ends up being unable to tech for all of its matchups as well as it might hope to be able to. But make no mistake, this is still the best deck in the format, I think, and it does just about everything really well. Also, notably, it doesn't compete with space as much as my second best deck in the format. Where is the girl? These are in opus order, so there she is. I still think Refia is just the second best deck in the game. Does a little bit of everything. Plays a really good defensive game. The top end is the strongest in the game by far. Plays a controlling game. Being able to double your mana and remove cards from the field, and like, the tools this deck has for the downside of playing some bad backups are unmatched. And unlike a lot of other decks, you know, Mono Earth stretches to get to 12, EX Burst maybe 15. Refia just naturally can play a high density of them. Even the Bartz variant can get to 20 EX Burst, but if you don't play Bartz's, I've gone up to 25, 26, 27 EX Burst in this deck. I've played a lot of this deck. I really, like, it's amazing how good it is, how much better it gets, and I think the new printing of Warrior of Light makes it even stronger, to be totally honest, in handling some of those matchups that might have tried to run it down in the past. Third, I probably got to put Chaos here. I still don't know how much of this deck to give credit to. I think that relative to Refia or Mana Earth, you're just making fewer decisions, and therefore I think that pilot skill shows a lot less on Chaos. That said, it's a deck that it's very difficult to play against as well, in kind of the same way that like a mono ice discard or my ice lightning deck. One of the big draws to those decks that is how difficult they are to play against. Chaos is a very easy deck to play mentally that's very difficult to play against, and there's a lot of value in that, even if the individual player agency I think for the deck is startlingly low. I do think this deck gets even better this set. I think that this is one of the only deck that I've been really impressed with Behemoth in. It's one of the only decks that like naturally can play Lightning without kind of having to stretch. It wanted 2-cost monsters and or Earth cards and or card named Lightnings, and it got all of those. I still don't really like this deck. I would love to just see Raijin taken out back and dealt with. Especially like I felt so bad for the guys that visited from Hobby Japan at the Oceania Continentals because they played against this deck like over and over again for people just trying to spike cards and Gunslinger. And I'm just like, man, this has got to feel so bad to play against this many times. But like the deck is really good. You should have a game plan for it. And if you aren't prepared for it, you're probably going to lose to it if you find it. I think the big question with this deck for me is how many players are willing to gamble on it. Because I think that there are good players that can play this deck and play it to a very high level, obviously, but they're going to lose games on it sometimes and it not really be any of their own fault. Just by nature of running 12 dark cards in a deck, sometimes you're going to brick and not draw the right cards. Sometimes your opponent's going to hit Leviathan on the first Chaos Special and you're going to lose the game on the spot. And I really wonder what the number of players willing to gamble the tournament on it is. We'll have to see on that. I think the other tier 1 deck that I'm gonna put Knights in tier 1 again. I still think that like this has a place as one of the best aggro decks that plays well into other aggro decks. I think it has a very strong Chaos matchup due to going kind of too wide for Chaos to deal with. I think it has a pretty good. It's considered to have a very good Refia matchup historically. It's got an okay matchup into Knights. Just another deck that's very difficult to play against. But again, a little bit like Chaos, it does have a bit of those agency issues. Some of the issues of like sometimes you don't hit Laswell, and when you don't hit Laswell, the deck goes from being like with Laswell, it's the best deck in the game almost, but without the Laswell, it goes down significantly. So where does that put the deck overall? I don't know, but I do think that it's unquestionably still a tier 1 deck, even though it got literally no cards this set that it's looking to play. What else? So I think Mono Water, by representation, probably has to go in tier 1. This is the only deck that really did well in just about every region. I think the only region that it like didn't have a top cut appearance. No, it did. It had a top cut appearance even in Oceania. It's showing up everywhere. I mean, Water is like such a strong and complete set of control tools, and it's only got a couple of truly heinous matchups. I think it does very poorly into Refia. It does very poorly into Mono Earth, and does very poorly into Mono Wind. But just about anything else that plays into Mono Water is going to struggle. It's actually like a very polarizing deck to play with or against. I think that's probably all I'm going to do for tier 1. Let's go right into tier 2, and I can't believe I am doing this. Mono Wind is back. Somehow Mono Wind returned. So there's a lot of weird metagame things that have contributed to Mono Wind returning. I think that the introduction of Citra into the deck, as opposed to playing Shinryu, shored up a lot of bad matchups that deck used to have. I think that it weirdly does have an okay Knights matchup, which I don't think anybody would have expected. Like, I think when Knights was as dominant at its most dominant, people just kind of assumed, oh yeah, Knights puts 4 forwards on the board on turn 1. Like, Wind can't play into that. Wind loses every time. But it turns out that with Citra, this deck can pretty consistently do a Luso 7 on turn 3 with a couple of power reductions to make, Corilla and Ramza both die. And that's enough. That's good enough to win that matchup. It has a pretty even matchup into Mono Earth. I think that, especially the Mono Earth builds that are playing like Une and Lev 6s to try to survive Chaos are going to fall a lot more victim to this build, or to Mono Wind. I think that the ones that are playing like Amaterasu and Terra are the ones that are doing better into Mono Wind. But again, it's that speed. I think that a lot of cards in the deck are randomly really good at the moment. Cards like Alexander, the freecast one, has targets in just about every deck that are important and relevant. Hits Corilla and Ramza, hits Ash in Mono Water or Leviathan, or even the Tros or the Blue Worms. It hits the Inguses and the Montleonuses and the Unes in Mono Earth. And all of the primals that have just come out. I think that with all of that taken in mind, I think that it's just one of the best decks right now, with one exception. I think that if you could guarantee this deck didn't play against Chaos, it's probably one of it would be tier 1. But it's got, I don't know what it's even supposed to do against Chaos. To be totally honest, do you just hope that the Chaos player bricks and ramp backups? Do you I don't know. I think that Belgiumine, in theory, can help that matchup a little bit, but I've done the math and it doesn't seem to line up very well, right? So I don't know. It really did come out, like I said, to combat the kind of Mono Earth and Mono Waters of the world, and just punted the Chaos matchup, with the idea being that if it's punting matchups anyway, you got to punt some of them. You might as well punt one. Oh, I gotta put Realm in tier 1 as well. Anything that this deck is in is super, super good. Shows up in Mono Water. It obviously won North America, piloted by Tori Kelly on that Earth Water build. I think that there are a gazillion decks this card could be absolutely broken in. And its most common homes, like I said, are going to be Earth Water, Mono Water. Could see it showing up in some 4-color decks, but just anything playing this card, keep an eye on. Turns out that you just can't print Pull It, Everett, and Atomos out of the deck, or Atomos and Apkalu, or all these other cards, and it just kind of wins the game by itself once that resolves. And it's very difficult to deal with the monster she brings out for a lot of decks. What else in tier 1.5? I'm going to put Kate Sith. This is Mono Ice. So I started mentioning, I think last set, at least towards the end of it, that I think Mono Ice was a lot closer than people realized to being really good. I had a lot of success and a lot of fun trying to make this work, if you go check out the stream archives. But turns out that Torgal being able to play Clive and Ifrit in the deck is kind of just what it needed, alongside cards like Shiva. I think that there's a lot of reason to be playing mono backup engines right now, and I think that Kate Sith is actually one of the best ones. I think that old Kurosame seemed okay, but I think the new Kurosame is just so much better, especially for ramp decks. So you kind of have everything. You have this discard pressure, you have removal with the Clives and the Ifrits, and the Jills and the Shivas. And you could kind of time walk your opponent for 4 turns in a row if you go Vincent into Kurosame, into Kate Sith, into Renoa. What does your opponent even do at that point? They haven't had their backup for 4 turns and you're beating them in the face over and over again, right? I think some of the downsides of this deck, it is kind of slow if it can't find the Torgal and the Clive. It might fold to Chaos. But I think even Shiva actually could be good. If there's a reason, even though Chaos, I think, is a deck that improved some of the most, it did get some of the most targeted hate this set, I think, with the Primals and the Icons. Or, I call them Primals because of 14, but the Dominants and the Icons, almost all of them beat up on Chaos in one form or another. Even Titan can kill both of the disciplinary committee members. So think there's a lot of potential for mono ice. I don't know that this deck is completely solved, but it is a deck that I think people need to be ready and willing to play against. Up next, I'm going to put Warriors of the Crystals here in this tier 1.5. Another one of those decks that I think kind of came from out of nowhere. Like, Lucio wasn't spoiled until spoiler season, and ever since then, it's kind of been this race to solve how many Warriors of the Crystal do you have to play for this deck to be good, which ones. And I think the only thing people really figured immediately was, well, this has got to be played with Glaciella. But I think there's a lot of things that people didn't realize about this card on release, which is just how crazy Crystal cards are if you're sitting with 10 of them. Like, going back to like Opus 15 Lena, if it didn't have the Crystal cost and said, 3 CP, play a 3 cost, play a 2 cost, that's not a legend. That's like one of the most broken cards in the game. And like a lot of the Crystal payoffs are like that. They just didn't have ways of consistently generating the massive amounts of crystals they would need for this. I've seen this played in Fire Water. I've seen it played in Mono Water. I've seen it played in Water Lightning with stuff like the Emperor and Lady Lilith. And in all of them, like the turn 2, turn 3 Lucio, get 2 crystals, get 4 crystals, get 6 crystals. It just kind of takes over the game, and then it starts winning stack wars. Like, your opponent can't outstack Lucio plus Glaciella, and it really is powerful. I think the biggest problem with this deck is just solving it in time, because it is a new archetype doing new things. I've seen stuff like Astrius that I'm not really a big fan of in the deck, but I think that there is so much potential. Like I said, played with either like a Tyvis or played pure, pure crystal good stuff. That keep an eye on this guy. I would not be surprised to see a couple copies of him make it in the top cut of Worlds. What else? Mono Wind, obviously. This is gonna go here next to the Luso, because I think that like Luso and Mono Wind, they're kind of slightly different-ish. They obviously can go in the same deck. I'm going to put the Bart's Build-A-Refia in Tier 2. It had some success in Japan. Tier 1.5. I like the normal build better, so I'm a little biased. But the Bart's Refia build does have success in Japan. It had a little bit of success in North America. And especially in 2-deck format, Bart's Refia plays fewer of the staples that Refia needs. So it might actually be better in that situation. So I think that is a deck that you might need to be ready to see. Chaos Arc also is seen a lot of success. Again, usually played Earth Water, but I've seen it played Earth Lightning as well. Do I have like a Sonon in here or something? Or like a Man in Black? I don't think I do, but Chaos Arc, just a very strong deck with lots of potential. Plays very well into decks like Chaos, into Knights, into Refia. It does well into Mono Earth. But there's a lot of mono decks running around, and those mono decks are going to cause the Chaos to maybe falter. That said, I think that even like just like an Earth Water control deck could very easily be tier 1.5, playing stuff like the New Leviathan. Siren. There's just so many strong cards, and I think that like the one water card that I'm like really convinced of this set is the New Leviathan. I think the best way to do that is to just Une spam the shit out of it, which also gives you access to Rydia, which helps you find your Yuna so that it's a lot cheaper. It's just really strong across the board. What else? I think 4-color good stuff probably is going to go in tier 2. I just think that if you're doing this, you're probably doing Refia things at this point. Scions, these were about the bottom of... I'm going to put them at the top of tier 2. I don't think they got any better. I think the environment's a little more hostile to them right now than it was last set. Oh, yeah, Warriors absolutely are in tier 2. Probably about right here. It kind of fell off a little bit, this like Water Fire Warriors mid-range tempo deck that was so dominant in NA and Oceania and just did not get the results in Japan or Europe. But I do think it's a deck that did very well and it's worth keeping an eye on. Any other tier? Okay, let's put some stuff down in like Rogue. I don't think Dragoons have done anything in a long time at this point. Same for like Pure Avalanche. I think most Sky Pirates stuff is probably Rogue. I know it did pretty well in Steve D's little mini tourney, but I would consider that like I don't know that Bosch is really going to bring this Vaughn back into the meta. I think the closest that he got, I'm going to put it in tier 3 because I still think the build that I had was Shinryu as well. Maybe there is like a tricolor Vaughn Bosch Shinryu deck that kind of remains to be discovered. Fran, I'm going to put in tier 3 as well, kind of in the same boat. Some really cool decks with this. I think that like the fact that now you can play Lightning in this deck more easily for cards like Gromus, and that like Bosch does not mind having the disciplinary members because he does the mill 3 in a way. You can like mill those and get a free body out of it. It becomes like this really cool tempo aggro deck. I don't know how competitive it is, but it's a lot of fun to play. Highly recommend giving it a shot. I can post a deck list for that in the future once I get back from Japan if people are interested. I think Warp Golbez probably in Rogue until we get new warps. I think Water Lightning, this can go up here next to Scions. Vikings and Pirates I don't think has really done much. WAF is very much still in Rogue. Sopfo is not any better this set despite getting its second wave of support. Sadly, I think none of the cards are very good outside of Jack and the Emperor, who are really more of crystal cards than anything else. Kingslave can go in Rogue. Again, just a deck that has not had any waste supports in a long time, and it was already showing its age in Opus 15 when it was first printed. Terra Summons can definitely go in Rogue. Still kind of one of the biggest missed opportunities, I think, in the game's history. I think we're at the point where this card probably will just never be good enough. Like, she reads so strong and so cool, but I just don't really see it. Guardians can go in Rogue. Are there any other decks in here that I see and I go, okay. I should put Cadets in Rogue, just by results and representation. I still think these cards are better than people give them credit for. I think that the Ace is really strong. The rest of the deck around it kind of lets it down. I think the Arden Casino deck is probably just a worse version of Hithlo. I think Monks hasn't really kept up with the times. That could probably go in Rogue. I think the new Warp stuff is really cool and really fun to play. Really don't think Tidus is a card that I expect to see at Worlds at all. But I wanted to put him in here just to talk about him. I did build like this fun Warp deck that played better than I thought it was going to. But it ends up being this really difficult combo control deck. I did see this really cool game from Grand Panda Gaming that was like Mono Ice Warp, where it was like playing Tidus as a standalone warp card next to Kyros, Theodore, Laguna. I think that's like really cool, but like I still think like, losing Vayne really hurts. I think that's about all I'm willing to put outright in Rogue. Ninjas, I'm going to put in tier 3. They do have some results. I think the new Mina actually is pretty darn good the more that I played with it. It's a deck that I think is better than people give it credit for. But do I think it's going to be a deck that lights the world on fire and wins Worlds? Probably not. Earthwind Storm actually has been cutting Telica lately. I'm going to put it in tier 3. I think a lot of what it does now is kind of slower than Mono Wind and more vulnerable than Mono Earth, but still a really cool deck. I'll kind of show some builds of this once I get back from Worlds, I think. I'm sure at this point this is what people expect of me. I'm kind of the Earthwind Storm guy. Do I put Rydia in Rogue? Like, her last soldier has dropped her, didn't play her at Oceania Continentals. Like, she had a smattering of results here and there, but I think at this point people are just too scared of the clouds and stuff from LB. She might make a resurgence at some point. I wouldn't be surprised, especially as we get further and further away from Opus 22 and Cloud, and there's less reason to play Lightning or Splash Lightning for Cloud. I think Rydia only gets better, and this card still has a very high power level. But she still also can struggle into cards like Refia and Chaos, and all of these can be like big problems for her. So I'm going to put her in tier 3 for now. She is a card to keep an eye on. I think Cloud Pod at this point probably falls under Rogue. I still do think that the Barret has some potential, but like it is in this awkward spot where you probably want to run the Barret with Cloud. And Cloud is a card that is just too vulnerable at the moment. It's very hard to put a threat out that's a 2CP5K and have it stick around. Especially factoring in that you really want the Jessie. So you have this like weird combo deck that you have to line pieces up with. And while the Barret's really good, I think the rest of the deck is not quite there. And like the Vincent doesn't help. Keep an eye on it next set though. Gigawall, I'm going to put it in tier 2. It's really fallen off because it has such an unfavorable Chaos matchup. But, I mean, the World Champion still piloted it. JFB, one of the most famous players in Europe, still played it at European Continentals. It was played in Japan a bit. I think that there just is an argument to consider this deck right now still. For the same reason you consider Mono Wind. It does pretty well at... If you're only losing to Chaos, you know, you might as well still play a deck if you're very confident with it. And I think Gigawall still has a chance at that. Icewind, it's not seeing play, but anytime that Mono Wind is good, Icewind is probably not far behind. I think that like the biggest reason to play Mono Wind is Fina right now, which is why every one of them is on 3 copies of Fina, and obviously Icewind can't play Fina. But I think that Icewind is a lot more explosive and more powerful when it does go off, which may actually be a benefit. I think that like it could have a good Mono Earth matchup in particular. Locking the backups in Mono Earth has been the way I've seen the most success at dealing with that deck. Hithlo combo. I can see this deck either being tier 2 or like the very top of tier 3. I'm going to put it top of tier 3. It had one top after the first few tourneys of the set. I really don't know why. I can't put a finger on why people aren't playing the deck more. I don't know if it just feels too random for them or too difficult to play, or if they don't feel like they can trust the deck. Like I don't know what the logic is on why this card isn't seeing play, but it's not. And I think that because of that, you have to put it in tier 3. It's not seeing the results that it would require, despite the fact that, again, if I say on turn 3 you're dead and you can't cast a summon to stop me because of Realm, like you have to Amaterasu Realm and then still have interaction for hit flow. In those 3 turns, like, I don't think there's that many decks that can do it. Again, it's got the bad Chaos matchup maybe, but like outside of Chaos, like what beats this deck consistently? I really don't think there's very much that does, if I'm being totally honest. I think the speed this deck goes off is too fast. And half the time, even if it fails the combo, it still ends up with like 4 backups and like 3 forwards. Like, yeah, they're still fine if they get Shantotoed at that point. They can just play normal Final Fantasy. So I still don't like this deck existing, but it's not tearing the game up right now, so I guess it has to be okay. Leo, I'm going to put here as well. It got one top last set. It's kind of the more explosive version of Mono Water, but um, you kind of have to play a bit more scuffed of a backup line when you're playing Leo, which makes sense. Cat 6 got a lot of new tools this set. I don't think any of them, I really don't think most of them fix the deck's problems. I know that, like, Steve D is, like, championing the new realm, saying, like, it fixes problems for the deck. You just have to not be willing to play the 5 CP lock, but, like, I don't want to not play 5 CP lock. Like, the whole point and reason the deck was good to me was that 5 CP lock was like an in-archetype Atomos, if not better. Like, you would almost be playing a Storm deck when you're playing lock, and without that, you're just kind of playing very average mid-range pieces based on the fact they have a 6 in the category, and, like, there are some strong 6 cards, and a lot of strong 6 cards that work together, but, like, I don't think the comparison to Refia is apt, because the top end for this deck is not Refia. It doesn't get to run 25 EX bursts. I could be wrong. I'd love to be proven wrong, but I'm glad that Steve really enjoys Realm, and she looks a lot better than she reads in that deck in particular. But I still think there's just too many restrictions on her, and too little that she does to catch up with the speed of the game and where it's at currently. And I think that without Lock is, again, that big unfair thing. If Exo-Ray was the thing that was gatekeeping 6 from being good, 6 could have already been playing Exo-Ray, right? Or could have already been playing Hippocampus. And it's not. And you could say, well, that's because it doesn't fit in what the deck is doing right now, and it could with Realm, but, like, that doesn't change that, like, it could have been playing those cards already, and the fact that it hasn't been means that, like, the only thing you're adding is, like, some consistency to it. And I'm not willing to write consistency as being enough of a reason to do that. Like, you could still play Realm with a small crystal package, for instance. Play the Realm and the crystal creating Terra, and that would give you the ability to play monsters straight from the deck as well, and nobody did that even. So, Twins, I'm still going to put the very bottom of tier 2. They didn't see a ton of play last set, but, like, they're never bad. Like, Twins as a deck is just, it's never a bad deck. I think our Ice aggro decks I can put in tier 2 as well. They didn't get a ton of results last set, but they did well enough that I feel pretty good putting them here. I played Ice Lightning and won Oceania with it. I think they get a little better this set thanks to the printing of cards like Kurosame, but I don't think that they're going to fundamentally become the new best deck in the format. Griever Turbo really has not been seeing play since it was since the set. I'm going to put Soldiers in tier 3 with a asterisk to keep an eye on it. I think that, like, especially next set with Tears of the Planet, this deck could take off a ton. I think for now it's missing just that one wave of support, but it's got a lot of potential. Having a card that says your opponent discards 3 is always a scary conundrum. 13, I'm still going to put in tier 3. At the end of the day, if Steve can't make these cards work, then I don't think anybody can. So I'm just going to trust that if Steve Sauce didn't top with them, then I think the 13 is well and truly gone from the meta without new support. I could be wrong. Because I still was saying, even as recently as last set, that I think that, like, people kind of overestimated this deck's weakness to cards like Cloud. Like, again, looking at the top here, doesn't play Cloud, doesn't play Cloud, plays Cloud, doesn't play 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 Cloud. Like, in all of those situations, Lightning is totally fine, right? So, or, you know, you're going, like, Vanille, Hope, Pass still is, like, you know, a very threatening first turn, but, like, you could still play 2 backups, then go Vanille Hope, or backup Vanille Hope. So, I don't know what's caused the deck to fall so far out of favor, but it has. I guess this did win North America. I think for that reason alone, it's going to go in tier 2. It's got a smattering of results here and there. I think the fact that Hunter Nance didn't play it and played Knights instead, I think says a lot about the deck. Like, it's kind of consider like Hunter to be like the Magista pilot in the world. So, like I said, when he doesn't take the deck to the most important event of the year, then that means to me that the deck probably is weaker than Knights for sure. But Samurais, I really like the new Tenzen, and I actually think like there's some really cool stuff you can do with the new Jed. But I think for now I'm gonna drop this. I'll put it at the bottom of tier 3. I don't think Samurais, because Mono Fire is probably about right here, like the top of tier 3. Like Samurais is just Mono Fire with a slightly different engine played. Like it still does similar-ish things. Still like Rufus Rug. I think could be like by itself can just win games. Turks, I'm still gonna put about tier 3. I think is what I had them last set. I'm gonna bump the 14 aggro deck by a little bit. It does get a bit of help from all the 14 support last set. It still seems decent. I'm gonna do this only because I think this deck actually does have some potential still. I think that the new Lilith set from last set, the new Portia, all of that. I've said it for ages. Dancers are one card away. Dancers are one card away. I really think, like at this point, they are like a 2 CP win backup away from being like rogue playable, if not a good deck. And I'd love to see it. Soiree, again, kind of like Samurais, always around that tier 3 slot. I'm going to put Retainers in tier 3 as well. I know this is probably an unpopular opinion. Like, I'm the only person that really gives this deck a lot of metagame space, but like it really does well into just about everything. It has a very high top end, ways to feed into a Storm Engine, but it also has a lot of anti-aggro tools, and I really like the new support I got last set. Waltzes, I'm going to put at the top of Rogue. I do think this is a deck that always has a lot of potential to sneak out, but looking at what's at the top of the metagame right now, it's going to do poorly into Chaos. It's going to do kind of into Mono Water. It's not going to do great into the Realm decks. It's going to do okay into like Refia, maybe okay into Mono Earth. It can do okay into most of these decks, but it's going to be a metagame call when it is good. I'm going to put it in tier 3. I think it's better than some of the stuff that in Rogue. Ice Earth doesn't really have any results recently. Same for like the Cat 4 tribal. I'm going to put like Earth Water or like Mono Earth monsters in like tier 3. If you're playing Mono Earth, you probably should be playing this instead. But if you're like dead set, the deck is completely serviceable again outside of Chaos, which is kind of gatekeeping a lot of these control decks. X and Mill, I'm gonna put this next to Lucio. I had this last time as like this mono water deck, but splashing the crystal stuff in young X and Mill. Deck is still really, really good, but I think that now adding Lucio to it makes it like even better. Summoners, this got some success towards the beginning of last set, but fell off pretty hard as people settled on Water Lightning and Water Fire Warriors. But I still think probably around tier 3 is where I would put Summoners. Odin OTK, another new deck. And I'm going to be honest, I think this is just like a worse Hythlodaeus deck or worse Chaos with like no in between. The fact you can't search Barnabas is a huge problem. There's just no way of getting to the card. Like your best options are like Ezel with a 1 cost and a 2 cost, which is like not good. Or like Spiritus, which again, like the more you read the other cards you have to do to make this card work, I just like cannot in good faith say that I think this card is better than the Hitlo combo or Chaos, even with like Behemoth plus Odin with a special being, that's 6 damage. Like that's so much damage, but I don't believe in it at all. Warriors of Darkness, I'm gonna put in tier 3. Same with the Cat 8 stuff. Again, in L3, Cat 8 is like tier 0 right now. As of like 2 sets ago, it was the only thing worth playing. Well, I guess also it was Gigawall and Cat 8, but Gigawall rotated out. So now it's just Cat 8 that's still in there, and I don't think anything from the last set's going to dethrone it as like a completely realized deck from the last couple of sets. It might integrate some more new discard tools. Maybe it adds like Genesis plus Sephiroth to it now. But no, this deck is still okay. Just kind of falls as worse than Knights for the most part when you have access to the full card pool. And I think Warriors of Darkness is really cool and really strong, but needs some help. Reagan, this is like the Kieran Warp deck. Like you'd have like Kieran, but you'd also run like Theodore so that you can run Vayne. And Reagan can help you find the Vayne, or like a Renoa to make your opponent discard like their entire hand and kill them in a couple turns. It's like fine. Has a couple of successes here and there. Siren, I'm actually going to put up in tier 1.5. Shows up a lot in these. Oh, no, this was like Siren Rug specifically. Siren Rug is like, I think, tier 3. Like, if you assemble the combo, it's very difficult to deal with outside of EX Burst, which, again, a lot of decks are really packing to deal with the best decks, but like there are ways that I can play around those EX Bursts really well. But Siren as a card is really strong. The Japanese Chaos Arc lists are all in one copy of it next to only 8 4s in the main deck, which makes it very difficult to actually remove things by targeting. And yeah, I think this seems like a pretty decent little tier list. Twins might be a little too high on here. I'll drop them down. Move Megissa up. That seems probably worth it. Let me know if I missed any of your favorite decks, if there's anything that I'm like clearly, wrong about or missing, but this video's gone on for 45 minutes, which is probably about as much. So thanks for watching. Go wish me good luck in the comments below. And hopefully, next time I talk to you guys, I'll have some fun stories to tell about Worlds. See you in the next one.